Well, last week we officially got to meet the Rockies' new president of baseball operations. So now let's talk about what this offseason could look like for the Rockies and what the roster in 2026 might look like as well. That's coming up next on the DNVR Rockies podcast. Welcome in, everyone, to the DNVR Rockies podcast. Happy Tuesday! We are rolling in after about a week after the Rockies officially announced, and we got to meet our new president of baseball operations, Paul DePodesta. We got a good show lined up for you guys today. We're talking about the roster and what that's going to look like in 2026, who's on the table to get traded or offloaded this offseason, who could possibly be coming to Colorado. That's coming up in the conversation. We're also going to be talking about some other a bit of a surprise team that's entered the mix of free agent spending this offseason. What does that mean for the Colorado Rockies moving forward? And we will, of course, react to the press conference, the introductory press conference of Paul DePodesta that went out on Thursday of last week. It's a good day to talk about some Rockies baseball.
Dude, this entire offseason has been so much fun in the idea that so many things are changing. We don't know how well it's going to work, and
Sure.
We don't expect it to be a massive overhaul of actual on-the-field baseball product in 2026, but there are a bunch of moves that have been made. You know, the whole pitching philosophy is changing at Colorado, which hopefully, you know, Abby's having the worst pitching staff in baseball last year and the worst numbers. You're glad to see things like that changing instead of staying the same. So I'm really stoked for everything that happens this offseason because it's all going a different path than we've been going down for 3+ years. And everybody that's a diehard Rockies fan and wants to at least watch a salvageable product on the field,
A competent baseball
team and look like, not necessarily, they don't have to win the World Series next year, but they have to move in a clear direction that's different than the one they were going to. And that has been the case so far. I have nothing to say otherwise.
What's the age-old saying? Ignorance is bliss. We don't know what the Rockies are going to do. We don't know what Paul DePodesta is going to do. But right now, I feel pretty comfortable in that. I feel pretty comfortable saying, hey, it's going to be different than what we saw last year. I was actually talking to our good friend Hank, who's been on the show a bunch. We were talking to him before this show, and I was saying, look, no matter what Paul DePodesta does, just in having conversations with him last week, getting to talk to him for the first time, getting to hear some of his insight on what his plans are for the Rockies, it can't be worse than what we've had in the past. And I feel like there's more competency in the planning perspective and even maybe in a support from the ownership than what we saw with Bill Schmidt and GMs and ownership past. So it's headed in the right direction. We're excited about that. We are going to react to some of the things that we heard from Mr. DePodesta coming up after this first break. But I want to talk about some of the more tangible things that he mentioned in his introductory presser. You talked about the pitching philosophy, but he also talked about, signing people this offseason, saying that, we hope that this is going to be a pretty active offseason. We gotta kind of figure out ways to revamp this roster going into 2026. Like you said, not going to be something that, is life-changing. We're not going to see this team in the playoffs next year, but hopefully it's a step kind of towards the right direction we want to head into. And the number one thing he mentioned was pitching. And I think we heard it from Walker. We heard it from him. And I spoke to Dick after the press conference, and Dick also mentioned pitching. So we know it's on the front of everyone's minds. I think once the GM is set up in place and hired, once we maybe have a manager in place, I think we see the Rockies hitting pretty hard in the pitching category of offseason free agent signings. Not saying it's going to be a huge signing, but that is, I think, the number one goal in changing this roster for 2026.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing we've heard from Paul DePodesta now, as Walker even mentioned in that press conference, words, you can hear a lot of words, but until things start getting done, that's when Rockies Nation will actually start to believe that things are changing. Anybody can say anything they want, and the Rockies we've kind of felt like the Rockies have done that for a couple of years. They come out with a few quotable moments either whether it's winter meetings or spring training about the defense, about this, about that, and then everything is lip service from the Rockies organization. So the one thing that I've heard multiple times in multiple different ways as we're talking about is DePodesta's been pretty bullish on the fact that they're going to go out and sign guys. And I don't know if it was 2 pods ago, 3 pods ago, we kind of talked about towards the end, the starting rotation and what that looks like, right? What those 5 guys look like. And I have, in listening to him, I have changed my not philosophy, but what I think is going to happen. Like originally I was like, all right, Kyle Freeland's still be here. Tanner Gordon's still going to be here. They may give starts to Bradley Blaylock. You know, there's all these
Ryan
guys.
Feltner still has a chance to come back.
Ryan Feltner as well. And now I'm like, maybe 1 or 2 of the current Rockies or the 2025, or even, Feltner pitched a little bit in 2025. So any Rocky starter that you saw take the mound that wasn't like out of the realm of, I guess we have, what's the guy's name that pitched against Paul Skeens?
Are you talking about Cade, McCade Brown or whatever?
Brown, there we go. There's a few guys that have like a little bit of experience that you still don't know what they are. But I think a lot of these guys that have had 30, 40, 50 plus starts in the MLB are a lot, to me, they have a lot bigger chance of getting pushed out now. And we may see 3 to 4 names that are currently as of right now on November 17th, not Rockies, November 18th, not Rockies, that may be in that starting rotation come opening day in late March of 2026.
Yeah, I think the good thing about Paul is there's no prior bias. Again, we were talking to Hank before the show. We were talking about, some of the former deals or non-deals that we saw Bill Schmidt make. And I think a lot of, from Bill Schmidt's perspective, a lot of the decisions that were made, and maybe this was a Monfort thing, maybe this is putting too much of the blame on Bill Schmidt. For all I know, Dick Monfort was in his ear telling him to or not to do or not do certain things. But, the decision to not trade Ryan McMahon when he was in his prime, when everyone and their mother knew that you should be trading Ryan McMahon, and they said, oh, no, we like the guy too much. We think he's a Colorado kid. He doesn't want to get traded, so we're not going to trade him. I think Paul DePodesta comes in with a clean slate saying, hey, I don't know these guys. All I can see is their numbers. And so if I'm going to find a guy who has better numbers or better potential output than X player, I'm going to move on from that player. And I think that's the beauty of this, is that there's no ties, there's no prior connections that, guys are holding on to. If Paul DePodesta comes in and says, Kyle Freeland, I heard you used to be good for the Rockies, but you're not there anymore, and I've got a guy who's a perfect replacement for you, then he's going to move on from him. So I don't have specific names. I think it was Mr. Purple said, did Depot give you Depot give you guys any names he's looking at for offseason trades? He didn't. But I think the general consensus that the media came to when we were talking is that there's not really an untouchable pitcher. There are pitchers who make more sense because of their contractual situations, and Senzatella. It's gonna who's gonna take Senzatella right now, and you've got a year and a half left under Senza's contract, and so there's situations that are going to be a challenge to get rid of players, but there's no untouchables on the starting pitching side right now, and that's including Chase Dolander. So I'd be curious to see how this offseason plays out.
Yeah, and this kind of goes into the question that Felix asked a little bit earlier about, do you think the players are excited for this hire? And to be honest, just like Mr. Purple said, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I think they're terrified.
Yeah,
and
I'm sure.
Basically, there's maybe 3 players right now, depending upon how Paul DePodesta takes it. Just like you said, he's got a clean slate, relatively speaking. He's going to be able to see these numbers. Hopefully, he doesn't go full clean slate, because then we just roll out the 2025 Rockies into 26 and see another 43-win team, which nobody wants, right? He's going to have to evaluate the players from their last year. But Hunter Goodman is safe. And when I mean safe, doesn't mean he's not tradable, doesn't mean he'll be on the roster, but safe as in he is a MLB, obviously Silver Slugger winner. Shout out to him. I know he gave him a little shout out last pod. Silver Slugger winner, learning the catching position, a great kind of cornerstone for your organization. And then if you look past the past couple of years and the weird little things, either injuries or off the field stuff that happened to them, I think the Rockies right up the middle of the field, Hunter Goodman, Ezekiel Tovar, and Brenton Doyle are the three guys that are not necessarily safe to be on the roster, but are safe enough to say, I'm an MLB level player, whether that means the new front office trades them as an MLB player for another MLB player, or trades them for younger pitching. And I think the very interesting thing about going into this offseason and the trades they're going to make is the Rockies right now, we talked a little bit about pitching, there's outfield questions. The Rockies have so many of these tweeners right now that I'd like to see that get cleared out. Yep. I'd like to see all of those guys either get traded and go, super young, which that'll be an interesting point on the trade market and just who the Rockies sign. Like if they start signing and trading, let's say they trade Brenton Doyle for 2 high A prospects. That they're going to try to build from the ground up, right? They're not going to trade for other AAA prospects or other major league players. I'm not saying they're not going to do that, but it'll make a lot more sense if DePodesta goes in and takes MLB ready players or theoretically MLB ready players, which the Rockies have a ton of those. The Yanquiel Fernandez, Adael Amador, a bunch of guys that are pretty good AAA players, probably deserve a spot in the major leagues somewhere for a lower level team like the Rockies, but are also not good enough to where you say, okay, that guy's going to be in our 26-man roster and be in the opening day roster next year. Let's get rid of him and get younger and go, all single high A rookie ball guys and build from the ground up in this new, whether it's pitching or hitting or whatever, new system and new philosophy that they have from the start, and not trying to retrain all these guys in AA, AAA that you don't think you're talented enough on this new philosophy.
Yeah, they're like depth pieces on most rosters. Again, you think of the Tyler Freemans. Tyler Freeman was great for the Rockies last year, but on most other teams, he's a depth piece. He's a guy that's coming in, late in a game, off the bench to get a base hit type of thing. He's not starting for most teams. You talk about, the players up the middle, and I wanted to pose this question to you guys in the chat. Drop a comment in the Toyota chat if you have some insight on this. But who do you think are the actual untouchables? The guys that you cannot trade for the Colorado Rockies, or that you should not trade or move on from the Rockies this upcoming year. You mentioned Hunter Goodman. I think he's absolutely an untouchable. I think Ezekiel Tovar is still in that conversation. Tovar had a down year last year, but he still has the tools. He's super young, Gold Glove shortstop, youngest Gold Glove shortstop in National League history. He can have the potential to have a plus bat if he's healthy and whatnot. I think Tovar and Goodman, to me, are my 2 untouchables. I can't think of another one that I could sit there and honestly say is an untouchable. You can't. We'd be upset if DePodesta announced that he was trading said player. It's really 2 of them for me. And the guy that I think a lot of people end up throwing into that list that I don't think deserves to be there, not because he's not a good player, but I just think because of the time of his career, Brenton Doyle. His name constantly comes up. People say, hey, it's Coors Field. You need to lock down that center field. He's, so athletic. He's, won a couple Gold Gloves. And you're right on all of those fronts. But the Rockies have still lost 100+ games with him every single year. And Brenton Doyle, he's got team control all the way through his prime, theoretically. And his prime, he's not that young of a player anymore. His prime is kind of right now. And he should be playing the best baseball of his career. There are a lot of other teams that need that more than we do right now. And the Rockies need to go get something in return for players like Brenton Doyle, who don't really serve a purpose on this current version of the roster. So am I saying that Brenton Doyle is going to get traded or moved this offseason or this upcoming year? I don't know. I really don't know. But if that was to happen, I wouldn't come on this show upset. And I would like to see, obviously, what they get in return for that. But I do think that's something that could at least be in the conversation this offseason for the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah, another guy that I've seen some of the comments say, fascinating to see what a Chase Dollander trade would yield.
That would be.
Now, I'm going to give this a caveat. I'm going to give myself a way out, which I don't do a ton with the Rockies in my takes. I normally just lean full into it. I think Chase Dollander should be closer to untouchable from the fact of you don't get that high of pitching prospects that often. Now, we know in the draft they're going to be picking at least 10th the next couple of years. So adding that high level, very, top-notch prospect is going to be tougher. And I think Dollander should be untouchable unless the one caveat is I think that DePodesta and the new pitching philosopher, the new strategist, all these guys, all the way down from AAA down to single A, rookie ball, whatever, unless he doesn't fit that mold that they're looking into, I think that's an okay trade. But for me, you do not want to trade a potential future ace just because it's a better deal for you right now. Like I think that he's a guy that could come up and be the next Herman Marquez when he was really good, or be the Kyle Freeland when he was really good to start his career in Coors Field. Like, I think this new pitching philosophy and this new way of doing things will help Chase Dollander a ton and can reshape. You know, he had some ups, had some downs last year, but I think I don't want to give up on that level of a talent yet. That'd be like trying to trade Ethan Holiday right now just because you can get something for him. Like, you still have a few guys in your system that are high level prospects. I know Dollander doesn't really fall in that category anymore because he's had basically a full year at the MLB level, whether he was up, down, hurt, whatever. I think Dollander's a guy that you have to keep on your roster unless it's just we're going full into, he's a much like a non-contact strikeout pitcher. If they go a different direction with that, I feel a little bit better about trading him. But the overall talent level, I don't want to trade away those guys quite yet.
Yeah, and it goes back to how much do you trust your pitching development staff? And we saw some news updates over the weekend that the Rockies moved on from a good majority of their minor league pitching development coaches. Whether that was a DePodesta move or whether that was something that was already kind of pushed down from the ownership saying, hey, we're bringing in a new guy at some point, and so you guys need to start moving on from this pitching situation. I don't know. But regardless, the Rockies made those moves and relieved some longtime pitching coaches within the minor league system. So things are changing, and we will keep you posted on how that affects the upcoming roster. But we got to hit our first break of the show. After the break, let's react to the introductory press conference. There were some quotes that I want to get to, some certain things that I want to talk about. So we'll talk about that and more coming up next. Well, I want to give a huge shout out to our friends right now over at Brunt Workwear because the winter months are right around the corner. And look, I get it. It's still a little warm outside. Feels like fall is still in full swing here, but winter's coming up. I think Thursday it's supposed to get a little chilly here in Denver. So you got to have some work boots that are ready for winter. And Brunt Workwear, they have the best boots to do the jobs that you need to do, whether it's shoveling snow outside or maybe you're trying to get your car unstuck from a ditch on the side of the highway because, maybe the roads were getting a little too dicey. Well, you got to have some good work boots that can do the job. And Brunt has their best-selling Marin work boots that are not only built for the toughest job sites, but they're completely waterproof. And I got to say, I have done a lot of outdoor activities where my feet have gotten wet, and there is no worse feeling than wet feet, especially when it's cold. And that's not something you have to deal with when you've got Brunt work boots. They also don't just have boots. They've got more. They've got work clothes and different apparel that you can choose from and be prepared for all of the different outdoor activities that you do coming up. So with temps dropping and the holidays coming up, it's time to treat yourself or the hardworking man in your life with real comfort. Skip the throwaway gifts and get him something built to last. Brunt Workwear. Our listeners get $10 off their entire order using code DNVR at checkout. That's bruntworkwear.com. Use code DNVR. Order today and let them know you heard it right here on the DNVR Rockies podcast. I also want to give some love to our friends over at Coors Light. Coors Light is the official light beer of DNVR, and I absolutely love a good, cold, refreshing Coors Light, especially this time of year. I know fall and winter get kind of slept on when it comes to drinking beer, but I was watching the Broncos just whoop up on the Kansas City Chiefs the other day and had a couple Coors Lights, and it just hit the spot, man. I mean, there's no better feeling than watching A, the Broncos win, and B, doing it with a couple cold Coors Lights in your hand.
I was watching college football all Saturday, and while we still have this nice weather, I have a TV on my back deck. And yeah, I know it's
a
temporary.
Solid setup.
Yeah, man. I know it's temporary, but every Saturday that I get to use that, I will. And I've gotten into a little phase with my Coors Lights now. I used to buy just the cans, like kind of like a normal, like the bottle is now my thing.
Oh, your Coors Light bottle, okay.
Coors Light bottle. Mountains are blue on the side of it, and it goes down super easy. And I was hammering more than I'd like to admit on the podcast, Coors Lights. My son was outside. We were just playing basketball, soccer, baseball, golf, all this stuff. as I'm watching all the college football games. But the
Sounds
Coors
like
Light
a great
was
weekend.
Oh, it was incredible.
Incredible. We'll make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instant Cart by going to CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, based right here in our backyard, Golden, Colorado. Well, I don't know if you guys know this, but the Colorado sports scene's pretty wild right now. And
we did a podcast last week arguing about which team has a better chance to win a title.
And we came along the consensus, although you didn't really agree with this, that the Nuggets have the best chance. The Avs are a close second and the Broncos are third. But you made the argument, and RK kind of agreed with you, that like if the Broncos won against the Chiefs, that like they're on a fast track to the Super Bowl, man. And
if the Super Bowl
here
goes
we are.
through Denver, if the AFC ends up going through Denver and we have multiple playoff games at 5,280 feet, I'm telling you, I want to come back to that because I got shit on. And
I know.
People in the comments were like, "Oh, that's clickbait. He wants his clip put up." I'm like, "No, it's mathematically a lot easier for them to do, especially if they're playing at home in Denver. They're on the fast track for that now."
Yeah, well, the reason I bring this up on a Rockies show is because you guys are well aware. The Rockies are the odd man out here in Colorado. We're the ugly stepchild that just gets pushed aside because the Nuggets, the Avs, and the Broncos, rightfully so, take a majority of the love, and they're incredible. And I have no hate or disdain for any of those teams. I am going to be absolutely stoked when we have 3 playoff teams all competing in the state of Colorado. But if I'm Paul DePodesta coming in, and he's a former NFL executive, he's very aware of where the Broncos are. He knows sports. He knows where the Nuggets are and where the Avs are. I'm sure he's well versed on just sports as a whole. That's got to light a fire under you, man, when you see, hey, look, this is the golden age of Colorado sports, and we are literally the only team that not only is not in a playoff race, but is also just the laughingstock of Major League Baseball from a PR and optics perspective. Like, that's got to light a fire under your ass to go and fix this.
Yeah, and seeing how the city of Denver, it has always been a Broncos town, but now that the Avalanche and Nuggets have had this basically decade run since they started to get hot in 2016,
You have the
2017.
best players in each sport.
Yeah, you're getting the MVP in each sport. You're in the playoffs every single year. You're competing for championships every single year. And this city's obviously behind them. And as we said, and Paul DePodesta, I think, very much knows this. He's talked about it multiple times on whether it's MLB Network or his press conference or his introductory press or whatever. He knows how pumped this city will be and how good we already are, and I say we as Rockies fans, how much we already fill the stadium, how much we already want this team to be good. And they were literally as bad as it could be.
Yeah.
And you get this team competing again, and the rally, we see as we got into the playoffs, or the MLB playoffs, not the Rockies playoffs, obviously. You saw a couple of videos resurface of 2007 and the rally towels going and how insane Coors Field was. And Paul mentioned that he was in the building for that. And Mark Kisla had to also mention that he was there too. Like, oh, okay.
I know.
Sick,
It's
dude.
like, what are we
Yeah,
doing here,
congrats,
Mark?
bro. So was I. I was in the seat for that. Okay, thank you. I was 11 years old.
I thought that was great. That was great.
But yeah, just having another team at Coors Field that will be good. I mean, it's gonna pop off, and it's honestly, I love Denver sports more than anything. It's honestly unfair if you have all 4. So
Yeah,
right
I
now,
can't even imagine.
the Rockies will take a little time off. They'll get a chance to be part of this party. This unfortunately ended last night.
Yeah.
Nuggets lost to the Bulls. I was bummed.
That was bummer.
But the Nuggets the Rockies have a chance to join the Nuggets and the Avalanche in April as they're going on their run to the playoffs, winning games at Coors Field and making this home record be just still intact. Can't say that I believe they will do it, but they have a chance to do it.
Man.
They have a chance.
That is your purple glasses take for the day. That is the most purple glasses I've seen you in a while. But no, it was cool to see Paul talking about, just the fans here in Colorado, because the fans are really, you guys are what deserve the success. This has been a brutal stretch. Almost a brutal existence at times for the Colorado Rockies. So I hope for your guys' sake, for our sake, that we can get back to winning at some point. But we got to hear from Paul and we got to hear from Walker, and we surprisingly got to hear from Dick. I actually didn't think Dick was going to be there for that. And was he even really there? I mean, did you see the body language? Yeah,
physically he was there.
I thought it was so funny. So I've never actually met Dick like in a Rockies sense. I've met him in Greeley when I was doing UNC games, and he's shown up to some of those games. But I've never actually met him in the Rockies sense. And oh my gosh, we talked to him a little bit after the presser ended, and I understand why he doesn't talk to the media. He has zero PR training, no media presence. He just speaks, and the stuff he says is just like, you probably shouldn't be saying that. You know, like it's not like it's bad stuff. It just doesn't make you look good. Like the Rockies optics just aren't great to begin with. And then he talks about like, he was talking to us about his decision process and how he was going about like, you know, approaching data and analytics. And it was literally like the stuff he was saying was just kind of like someone in college just kind of like stumbling across data and analytics and being like, oh, that's kind of cool. Or like, okay, a better way of putting this is like when your grandma or your grandpa gets like an iPhone.
I was just going right there. My mom will bring her iPhone to me and be like, how do I call someone?
Yes. The examples he was using was just like, you obviously have no idea. And I think that's fine. I mean, ownership doesn't need to be the baseball minds. But the issue in the past, as we all know, is that, you know, Dick Monfort in the past has tried to play the baseball GM. He's tried to do the ownership thing and the baseball thing. And that's why the Rockies are where they are. So this isn't even a shit on Dick Monfort, you know, segment. Like it was nice to get to talk to him a little bit and just to get to have a conversation with him. But I did start to see what other people in the media have said where it's like, he just doesn't want to talk to the media. And I talked to him. I'm like, that's why. I understand it now. But he did say some things that were very interesting and talked to us, like I said, a little bit after the presser and basically confirmed what we all, I think, had a good understanding of, but no one had said it really publicly. He's pretty much stepping down. Not officially. He's still the CEO, chairman of the Rockies. He is the lead ownership group of the Colorado Rockies. But he's stepping away from the baseball side of things. He talked to us about the fact that he's going to be kind of shifting gears towards doing more ownership type things. So, you know, the labor dispute, the Players Association, you know, doing more ownership oriented things and less baseball things. And obviously Walker Monfort is stepping up kind of into that role. Now, whether Walker is the right man for that job, we'll have to find that out as we go. But I do think it's at least worth noting that I think ownership is starting to see, hey, yeah, we might have overstepped these last few years. We gotta step away and let a baseball guy come in and figure this out.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that it's 3 years down the line, but at least they're doing it now. And at least it's not going into another offseason of hiring this person from inside the organization and everything's going to change when this person's had the same philosophy as Dick and everyone down for, you know, the last 5 to 10 years, whatever it may be. This is a completely different, fresh perspective on how to play baseball at 20th and Blake, how to dominate Coors Field, whether that's their pitching, hitting, you know, veteran players, younger players. Like, we don't know what's going to come of this. We're going to start to see signings roll in and kind of get an idea of what the philosophy may be. Mm-hmm. But it's a signaling, a changing of the guard. And, you know, Walker, I'm excited for Walker. He sounded really good in the press conference, sounded like buttoned up and kind of a little serious, but obviously, you know, this is a huge role for him. And he knows that, you know, you're innocent until proven guilty in America. But as of this point, anything Rockies related, and especially in the front office and even players, you're guilty until proven innocent. And it's flipped. And so he knows that and sounded very buttoned up in the press conference. And Dick Monfort, you know, I see here, Dick is on the way out, which for Rockies fans, you know, normally Dick going in is better, but Dick on the way out is great for Rockies fans.
God, I had no idea where you were heading with that. Yes, on the way out for sure. And I can't believe that just came out of your mouth. Alyssa's like, yeah, no, we know where that was going. The other thing that I thought was really interesting too, and I don't know if you caught this. I was kicking myself. This was the vintage, like I was completely in my own little world when I was in this press conference. But I don't know if you caught that I asked the exact same question at the end of the press conference as someone else.
I didn't want to give you shit for it, but I definitely caught that. I definitely caught that. I was like, well, and the funny thing was, so I I was listening on my drive, right?
Yeah.
And I was listening on 850 KOA, and then I was trying to flip to watch it to get a clip of something that Paul DePodesta said.
Yeah.
So I missed your first question, and I only heard your second one, and I was like, okay, this guy didn't introduce himself like they told him to, and he asked the same question somebody else asked. Dude, I was like, what is this guy doing?
I was completely wrecked at that point. No, so I don't know, some guy from Telluride Tribune or whatever asked, hey, are the 2027 negotiations, the trade dispute, is that going to impact decision making now, which was kind of my big question. Like, I've been talking to you guys about that on the show. It's one of the biggest things that I'm trying to figure out with the Colorado Rockies. And I think I was tweeting something. I was not paying attention because like 2 questions later, I asked the exact same thing. They handled it like a champ. I didn't realize I did that until I went back and listened to, and I'm sitting there like, oh my God, what an idiot.
Well, and let's be real here. I've had like 3 post-game press conferences, and I've been too scared to ask a question in 2 of them. And then the one time I called our manager coach. Yeah, so like I have no room to like give you shit, but I did hear that, and I was like, dude,
what are you doing, man? Yeah.
I was like, did you not hear that?
Who was it that came up to you? Was it Spilly that came up to you and put a hand on your shoulder?
Yeah,
and was like, hey, man.
Gave me and then at the next press conference, I was like, I'm not asking a question. I don't even know what to call this guy, more or less what my question's going to be.
Yeah, it's rough for us podcasters in the land of journalism. But yeah, no. And Scott says it was Scotty's question. Scotty Gange. Scott brings up the point. Yeah, better than Scott from 9 News question. I don't know if you guys heard Scotty Gange's question about the Deshaun Watson deal and whatever. It was a fair question, but the way he worded it was like, holy shit, man. He came in firing on day one, first impression, and he's just firing it out there. And I thought Paul handled it pretty well, saying, hey, I'm also not the guy out there calling plays.
Yeah, it gave Paul a chance to take kind of a quick shot at the organization that he left, because let's be real here, the Browns haven't been great over the past, the history of the Browns. I think they were good in maybe the 70s, way before we were even thoughts, like our parents were barely kids. And the Browns have made the playoffs 2 years in the last 2 of the last 6 years, which I defended. I'm defending Paul DePodesta on Twitter and X or whatever. But the question itself was but what it led Paul to doing was actually kind of hilarious. If you're reading into the tea leaves of what he was saying there, like he basically stood back and was like, I'm going to own this because I was, their chief strategy officer, whatever his title was there. I'm part of the, group that owns that decision. But at the same time, that player that we ended up pay, an unprecedented amount for and set a contract and whatever back in the NFL for years, potentially also wasn't good on the field, but I wasn't, in a roundabout way, I wasn't calling those plays that made him not look like the quarterback that we gave and $230 million guaranteed to.
And I also wasn't the guy who went out and, was an idiot off the field and did all it's like, it's just hard to say on some of those things. Yes, it's going to go against his record. And he did say, I lost my no-hitter a long time ago. And I actually really liked the way he put that. But that was an interesting first impression by Scotty Gange in the Rockies world. It was funny. I'm not someone to gatekeep the Colorado Rockies because I wasn't even in that room 2 years ago. But it is funny that, most of the season, we get the whole press conference to ourselves. It's, DNVR, Denver Post, MLB.com, Patrick Lyons there, Kevin Henry's there with the Gazette. And that's it. That's the entire press box for the Rockies side. And it's kind of nice. You kind of sit back, you're getting to watch some baseball. You get all
my elbows out.
Yeah, you got your whole work zone set up. And then something big happens and you're like jostling for spots. You're trying to get your question in. And it's just, it's a little more annoying.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you kind of what that was like, and I don't want to take us too far off track, but it was, as I was listening to it, I'm hearing these names, and then I'm hearing obviously like the bigger, like the Kislas and those guys that are kind of just all encompasing of Denver sports, but then the Telluride whatever,
Telluride Tribune. Yeah.
Like it's we don't want to gatekeep the Rockies. We want anybody that wants to be a Rockies fan to watch our show, to watch any Rockies content, read Kevin Henry stuff, read Patrick Saunders stuff, read Thomas Harding stuff, watch the podcast, be part of this Rockies organization, because at some point they're going to be good again and we're all going to be able to say that we were here when all this was happening and we were from the ground up. But it is a little annoying when you have these other people that essentially don't care, and then something big happens and they're like, oh, I was first on the scene, or I was in the press conference.
Exclusive.
Don't do that. If you're going to talk about the Rockies, you talk about teams good or bad, and that's how sports work. Not every sports team is going to be good. We're 30 years old, and we've seen the rise and fall of the Broncos. We've seen the rise and fall of the Nuggets. We've seen the rise and fall of the or fall and rise more with the current state of the Denver teams. But these teams are going to be bad. They're going to be good. They're going to go through roller coasters, and I just don't want a ton of people acting like the Rockies were always their team in 5 to 6 years when Ethan Holiday and Charlie Condon are tearing it up and we're in playoff spot. And they're like, oh yeah, well, I've always been a Rockies fan. Well, where were you in 2025?
I know.
That's
got to get in the trenches.
This is ground zero right here.
Got to get in the trenches. Well, we got to take our next break. After the break, I see a comment from Mr. Purple. Do you guys have any concerns or reservations about Paul DePodesta after your first conversation with him? Let's talk about that. And also, the Pittsburgh Pirates are coming out as apparently big spenders this offseason. What does that mean for the Colorado Rockies? We'll talk about that coming up after this break. Well, I want to give some love to our friends over at Toyota. Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR. And look, I cannot say enough good things about my Toyota. We're a Toyota podcast. This is not just because we're partnered with Toyota, but because we've been driving Toyotas for years. I drive a RAV4, Spencer. You just traded in your Tundra for the new 4Runner, and it's got to be a little bit of a change in pace.
It's definitely a change, but parking now, especially at DNVR and this back parking lot joke we have and all the tight little spots, I slid right in next to you today. No problem at all.
I know. I love it. I love it. It's nice seeing a backyard stocked full with Toyotas out behind DNVR. And there's a reason for that, because Toyota is such a great vehicle. There's so many different choices, whether you're going with the SUV, trucks, maybe you're going a little bit smaller. You want to go with a Camry. They've got all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, hybrid options, so many different choices. So if you are in the market to buy a new Toyota, visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson's Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson's Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR. Also want to give some love to our friends at Dick's Sporting Goods, because the holidays are coming up, although, still a little early, but you can get a head start on that holiday shopping. Whether you're shopping for your friends or your wife, you got to head to our friends at Dick's Sporting Goods, because they have the best sports gear, whether it's apparel, whether it's sports equipment, maybe you want to get, a new pair of cleats, or you want to get, some new golf clubs, or you want to get some apparel. Like I said, they've got brands like Nike, Adidas. They even have DNVR merch at Dick's Sporting Goods. So you want to get a DNVR t-shirt or hoodie, head over to Dick's Sporting Goods and you can get a head start on your holiday shopping. So many different choices there. Get your gear fast with free curbside pickup at your nearest store or easy shipping from Dicks.com, because every season starts with Dick's. All right, to answer Mr. Purple in the chat, do you have any concerns, reservations about DePodesta after your first conversation with him? I really don't. I don't think there was anything that stood out as like, I don't really love that. I had mentioned, I didn't love the way he answered his first question in Vegas about
salient moments.
Yeah, about hey, I'm in this for the moments, and we're all about creating moments here in Colorado. That's fine. I get where he's coming from. And again, it was the first question. I'm not going to judge his entire experience based on just that. I just, I want the idea to be we're here to get back to winning. And that's what I want to hear more from. I thought his press conference was great. I thought everything he said was fine. I think he's the right guy for the job so far. Like you said, it's hard to say because we don't have any official moves to actually put on his resume yet. But from everything I've seen so far, I don't have any reservations. I think we just have to wait and see. And that's kind of a good place to be and a bad place to be, because we're just sitting here like twiddling our thumbs. But I'll take it. Just wait and see.
Yeah, and I think my concerns, as most Rockies fans, you guys pay attention to the team just like we do. I think the concerns are not with Paul DePodesta himself, but with the ability and how much autonomy, I know that word's going to get way overused, that he has to change this team around. And I think, honestly, the firing of all of those pitching coaches, basically all the way down, shows you that there's at least going to attempt to be a change in the philosophy and how they do things. I think the biggest question will always be, if we're doing the DNVR Rockies pod and it's 2030, let's take us, off season of 2030, 5 years from now. I think the biggest question then will, if the Rockies either get better or they don't get better and they kind of continue middling and winning 40 to 60 games a year, the question will still always be, did ownership give this guy enough of a chance to make this team a winner how he thinks it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be it's not going to be a clear-cut question in 5 years of, is Paul DePodesta the right man for the job or not? It's going to be, was he given enough tools to be the right man for the job? And that's going to be a wait and see proposition as well. But I'm excited to find out because that question's been asked, right? It was asked in the press conference multiple times. And it's always going to be lip service. It's always going to be, and Walker mentioned it, we do spend money, and he's not entirely wrong. But I think everybody's still going to have the lingering question in the back of their mind. Is he being given the freedom to do exactly what he wants to do and not what he wants to do filtered through what the Rockies front office or ownership wants him to do?
Yeah, 100%. We'll start to see as things kind of unfold which direction they're heading in. But speaking of that, I don't know if you've seen these reports. Jeff Passan put out this morning that the Pirates are in the mix for a couple big free agents. Schwarber, Skubal, maybe Bellinger in that category as well. Now, the Pirates are usually considered a Rockies-type team. They're kind of in the ownership issues category when it comes to spending, lack of spending. You've got one of the best pitchers in baseball, Cy Young, in Paul Skeens, and yet they're still one of the bottom teams in Major League Baseball. So to see a team like that has historically cheap owners saying, hey, we sucked last year. Yeah, we had decent pitching, but we still kind of sucked last year. And we're going to go all in on a couple free agents. It was reported that Pittsburgh offered Josh Naylor $80 million before he obviously ended up signing with the Mariners yesterday for $92 million. Should that say something about the Rockies and if they should be starting to, with a new president of baseball operations in place, should they be starting to try to throw their name in the big free agent market, or is it too soon for that?
I think it's too soon for that. And I think this reporting basically has to do with the Pirates realizing they have a generational talent in Paul Skeens
that they're not willing to trade.
Yeah. And then there's already conversations about, is Paul Skeens going to go to the Yankees? That's just how it goes in the MLB. You have a team that's not the Yankees, Dodgers, and maybe that's Mets. There's a few other teams in there, but it's, this player is really good. When does he become a Yankee, a Met, a Dodger? And so they've been hearing those conversations. And this is very similar to kind of the Nikola Jokic situation in Denver, where they saw that you have a generational player and you should be, baseball's a little bit different. A starting pitcher doesn't have as much control over how a team's success is for an entire year. We can see that with how good Skeens has been, won a Cy Young, and they were still a middling to low level team. You need to build a good team around him. But that's the Pirates basically saying, hey, Paul, we understand how good you are. We don't want you to sit and be in a 60 to 70 win baseball team every single year. We want you to be out there starting Game 7 of the World Series, or out there starting a wild card game and being in the playoffs and using that ability to win us important baseball games. So that's where I don't think the Rockies need to get to that move yet, because they don't have that guy that is Hunter Goodman. This conversation may be had in 2 years or even after next season, but the Rockies don't have that player yet that is too good for the Rockies. There's no player on the Rockies that's too good for the Rockies as of right now, whereas you can kind of look at the situation in Pittsburgh and say, Paul Skeens probably deserves to win, and if the Pirates aren't going to be the ones that help him out, which they're trying to do, then he'll probably go somewhere else to do it.
Yeah. And I see Luke's comment, let's put 4 years, $80 million into facilities and equipment and technology. I get where you're coming from, Luke. Yes, I think the Rockies need to invest in the foundation first. And Paul talked about that in his introductory presser. My responsibility now is to meet everyone, to kind of see what the value of all of these different developmental people are, people within the organization who do the data and analytics. Are they the right fit for this situation? So while, yes, it would be super fun to be in the conversation, I was seeing some of these reports coming out for the Pirates, and I'm like, there's a little FOMO, of like, man, I'd love to see some Rockies reports. The Rockies are in the conversation. Even if they don't get it, they're in the conversation with some of these, top free agents. But I do think it's the situation is different. You got to get a foundation. You got to get a GM in place, first of all. You have to get a manager in place, which I see Brad mentioned. You got to get a new manager in place, which we'll talk about here in a second. There's other things you got to take care of first. So what would I love for Paul to jump the gun and absolutely crush a free agent right out of the gate, like, kind of like Buster Posey with the Rafael Devers trade that went off last year. That was kind of the big deal that started off Posey's start in San Francisco. Yes, I would, but I think the safer setup is just get the foundation laid first. Part of that foundation is the manager, though, and we did see a managerial update of sorts from Patrick Saunders of the Denver Post, who said that Warren Schaefer, while he's had conversations with Paul DePodesta, there's been no formal interview. I don't think that's room for concern yet, whether you want Warren Schaefer to be the manager or not. I think that's just the situation of you don't have a GM in place. You got to get a GM hired first.
Yeah, you got to work this from the top down. And that's what they're doing with some of their, strategy in the pitching. And they're basically getting rid of everyone essentially. But until you have a guy because we talked about the different types of managers, right? Last pot of, do you want a young guy that goes in with this team and could potentially grow with this super young team in terms of the roster that we currently have as of today? Or do you go with a more seasoned manager that's managed good ball clubs in the past and kind of be that maybe bridge to growing a young team and cleaning up the whole mess that has been the Rockies for the past 3 years? So once they have a GM in place that will more, I think right now, Paul DePodesta is putting the general strategy in place. The general manager will then be the one to go and find the players that fit Paul DePodesta's strategy. And then from there, the manager will be the one to execute on the major league field of what that strategy looks like, whether you're doing bullpen days every 5 days, you're starting your starters and pitching them less at Coors Field. Like, there's so many different ways they could go with the strategy of winning here that we'll have to see that, but that's got to be, it's a ladder system, as they talked about in the presser. Everything goes up to Walker and then still goes through Dick. So it goes down from Paul to then the general manager to then the manager.
Yeah. And Mr. Purple asked, should the Rocks have done with Arenado what the Pirates are doing with Skeens? Yes, you should have. And it probably went back before that. You probably should have not let DJ walk. We've talked about this before of like, where did it all go wrong? For me, it started with the whole DJ LeMahieu situation and then just snowballed down below that. But I think the Pirates have seen it go wrong on a couple different teams, and are trying to not get in their own way. I mean, you've got a guy who you've got team control. He's one of the best pitchers, if not the best pitcher in baseball right now. You have to make those years count. And it's not like football where you get a generational quarterback and all of a sudden you're like going to the Super Bowl the next year. Baseball, it takes a hell of a lot to build around even a generational pitcher. So I think the Pirates are starting to see that. The Mariners have seen that the last couple of years. They're starting to figure that out where they're going and putting $92 million into Josh Naylor and making all these big trades at the deadline. The Rockies are nowhere close to that situation yet.
Yeah, and I think to kind of piggyback off that on that comment from Mr. Purple, I'm going to put my purple glasses on, paint my beard purple real quick, put my hat on. The Rockies had a good team when Arenado was here. They made the playoffs back-to-back years, which in baseball, like in all these other sports, making the playoffs, the NFL maybe is a little tougher. If you make the playoffs in basketball, it doesn't mean you're a good team. If you make the playoffs in the NHL, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a good team, right? In baseball, if you make the playoffs after a 162-game marathon with a little amount of teams actually making the playoffs, that's a kind of a good season. And the Rockies were good, and they just decided that they were not. They told you, like the Pirates right now are telling us they're trying to go all in. The Rockies straight up didn't even try. They told us by trading Arenado to the Cardinals that they were not going to try to do that. And that's kind of where the downfall of this organization, where it got really low and rock's bottom for the past couple of years, because they made the conscious decision to not only not build around Arenado, but literally get rid of him and try to change the philosophy of the organization or the players that they had based on a package that they got back for a player of Arenado's caliber, which none of them ended up working out being legit major leaguers, unfortunately.
100%. But we got to pause for our last break. After the break, Charlie Condon and Cade Denton winning some awards in the AFL. We'll talk about that coming up next. I also really want to take a moment before we dive into this next topic. We do have some upcoming events as well. And so if you are a fan of all things DNVR, got some watch parties coming up, Broncos watch parties in particular. We've got the Broncos watch party coming up on November 30th. So that's going to be a huge time. I don't know if you saw some of the clips from the watch party at the bar for the Sunday Broncos game.
So good.
Awesome.
Which surprises me. Away game watch parties, I know the bar is always packed, but to get that place packed and how electric it was for a home game against the
yeah.
Chiefs, biggest game in Denver in the NFL in 10 years.
Yeah.
Electric. Yeah. Come to the bar. That November 30th game, you can get your Thanksgiving out of the way with your family. That's Sunday night. So you can even have the whole Sunday. You can go to church. You can do whatever you want to do on a Sunday. And then Sunday night football is always electric, especially when the Broncos are playing. And they play the Commanders, who haven't been that good this year.
Coming off a bye week. We'll see how that goes. Charlie Condon and Cade Denton taking a couple AFL awards. The Arizona Fall League wrapped up. And Cade Denton won AFL Relief Pitcher of the Year. That's pretty sweet to see. Charlie Condon won the ever infamous Sportsmanship Award, which, no disrespect to Charlie Condon, who I'm super excited to see him show up and be a Rocky hopefully next year. I just think it's hilarious at like a professional baseball, at that level, winning Sportsmanship Award. Not even like, like they do the awards for, like Kyle Freeland usually wins it for the Rockies of like people who give back to their community. That's super cool. Like that's like high level. The Sportsmanship Award, I saw that and I was just like, that felt a little elementary, if I could go that far.
Yeah,
but
unfortunately, it just feels very Rockies.
It does.
Your top
but good for
prospect
Charlie,
overall winning an award,
but it's
sportsmanship.
Yeah, I know. That's what I saw. It's just like, cool. Good for Charlie. We know Charlie's a great guy. I've talked to Charlie. We've had him on the show actually, right when he got drafted or after he got drafted. He's been on the show. Talked to him at Coors Field. Awesome guy, and he deserves to win the Sportsmanship Award. Like I said, this is no disrespect to Charlie. I just thought the optics of that were just kind of funny. But it brings up the conversation of, yes, we've talked about free agents that we could possibly be seeing in 2026, talked about possible trades, who's untouchable, who's not. We've kind of skirted around this idea that we could possibly be seeing some guys from the minor leagues making their way up. Charlie Condon being one of them. That Charlie Condon, it was already confirmed. Well, I guess it doesn't matter anymore because Bill Schmidt's no longer there. Bill Schmidt had confirmed that Charlie Condon was going to be invited to, spring training this upcoming year. I would assume that doesn't change even with Paul DePodesta in charge. So we're going to get to see Charlie Condon playing in spring training. I don't know if he does enough to deserve and earn a spot on the big league level this upcoming year, but it's a possibility. We could be seeing a couple new pitchers, Sean Sullivan, Gabe Hughes. There's some excitement around the corner of just a couple more prospects that we could possibly see coming up.
Yeah, and those prospects that they then call up during the middle of the season, I think the cool part about that is those are the guys that you can tell that the new front office, Paul DePodesta, future GM, are excited about and are part of the future plan. Like I truly think that Paul DePodesta, we talked about, is going to go out, and I'm looking at the list of free agent pitchers right now. And this kind of wraps into a comment from way earlier, but free agent pitchers will come here, but think more in the line of a Cal Quantrill. I keep going back to that. Like, had a decent season for the Rockies, and you're looking at the by WAR, Dylan Cease, Franmir Valdez, Ranger Suarez. None of those guys are coming to Colorado, right? But if you go down a little bit more, you've got your Chris Paddocks, your Brandon Woodruffs, Michael Sorokas, guys like that. Ironically, John Gray and Tyler Anderson are two guys right in that realm of WAR from their career as a free agent going into the season. But those are the guys that we see. And just like Luke is saying, 2 years, $25 million, 1 year, 12, 10 million. Like, you're not going to get this $30 million a year guy. But I do think that they're going to tell us exactly which way they're going by the fact that they're going to sign a few veteran pitchers, and they're going to hope that some guys are ready and certain guys coming from AA, from AAA. You've had, successful seasons from a couple of guys winning awards down in the AA and AAA level or having really good seasons. And the 2 or 3 pitchers that you got from the Yankees and the Jake Birds and Ryan McMahon deal, it'll be interesting to see how those guys develop and whether or not they make the big club next year. But a lot of excitement because I do think they're going to be fairly active in free agency. And not the way the Rockies have been active in free agency in the past. Let's put it that way. Like, yes, there's levels to this, and there's only so much they can do, especially in the pitching world and how many players they can get and how much they'll spend. But we're not going to see a bunch of Kyle Farmer, Nick Martini signings, I hope. I think we're going to see legitimate, if they're going to go out and sign somebody, it's going to be a legitimate, like Mr. Purple said, Alonso, yes, he is available. I want Pete Alonso. I want a guy that's going to play first base for 1 or 2 years before Charlie Condon. Not going to happen. But I do think they're going to sign some free agents that are actually going to come in here and not be fighting for a job with this, AAA player that they have. It's going to be like, this is our starting second baseman. This is our starting first baseman. This is our starting left fielder. Whatever it ends up being, like, they're bringing in legit players to either push the young guys or tell the young guys, like, hey, this is the level you need to be at if you want to play on this big club.
It's tough because Thairo Estrada was the big free agent signing for the Rockies last year, and he was hurt almost the entire season. So it's like we didn't get a good gauge on whether or not it was even a decent move for the Rockies to pick up Estrada. Now he's a free agent. Do you consider a move like that, similar level? I think Estrada was paid, what, $10, $12 million, something like that. Do you consider a move of that caliber, same output that we were expecting from Thairo Estrada, same money? Would you consider that a good deal, or do you think they should go beyond that?
No, I think that's a good enough deal. It's so tough to judge because of the fact that his season was so injury riddled.
Yeah.
But I want to see deals in that same light. Like when they let go, let Brendan Rodgers walk, they said, okay, we're going to go out and sign a legit major leaguer. Thairo Estrada was 29 years old at the time, like supposedly in your prime. We want to go get a guy that he is, all things considered, no injuries, no injury issues. He's our starting second baseman. And that will be the guys that's exactly the direction I want them to go, whether it's center field, whether it's second base, whether it's first base, whether it's, any of the outfield spots, really, because we talked about all those tweeners that they have. I hope they sign guys that you look at that signing and you're like, that guy is supposed to start. Like that money that he's making, he is he's going to be in the lineup for 140 plus games, barring any injuries or anything like that for the season. That will signify a massive change in the Rockies organization if they start going to do that versus like, oh yeah, this guy's going to be in a camp battle with Adele Amador at second base. This guy's going to be in a camp battle with Brenton Doyle at center field. Mm-hmm. That's the free agent signings we've gotten the last 4 or 5 years.
I want a world in which Rockies minor leaguers are fighting to earn their spots on the big league roster and not just getting thrown into the big league roster because there's no one else ahead of them.
Yeah, you were the AAA second baseman last year, and we don't have a major league one, so now you're the major league guy.
Congrats,
that's what we've seen.
Called up, and it's like, sure, they had decent AAA numbers, but did they really earn it? I think the only guy last year, from my perspective, that truly earned his spot from a minor league output was Ryan Ritter. And I don't mean earned it in the sense that like he did enough at the big league level to continuously earn it, but his numbers in the minor leagues were incredible. And you're looking at his numbers in the minor leagues and you're like, this guy's leading in average. He's hitting home runs. He's like, his on base percentage is super high. He's not striking out a ton. You looked at all of his metrics in the minor leagues and said, all right, if a spot opens up at second base or at the shortstop or whatever that is, you call him up. Everyone else, it was just kind of like, you just got thrown up there. I mean, Yanquiel Fernandez was like the same kind of thing. His numbers were fine in AAA, but they didn't stand out to you where you're like, we can't keep him down. McCade Brown's another example.
And maybe Kyle Karros, he had a stretch, like a week and a half stretch where you're like, all right, and then they called him up and you're like, okay, is this the next
but that again was the Ryan McMahon situation, right? I don't think Kyle Karros gets called up if it wasn't for Ryan McMahon getting traded. I don't think he was doing enough in the minor leagues to say we need to call this guy up because he's too good to leave in AAA right now. It just happened to be that they traded Ryan McMahon, and then you said, well, we've got a spot, and he is playing well in AAA, or I think AA at the time, or wherever he was. We'll bring him up, right? I think it was, from my perspective, it was really just Ryan Ritter who was just dominating at that minor league level where you said, okay, bring him up, let's see what he's got. And then it happened to be that you had injuries between Tovar and Estrada, and so you had a place to put him. I want there to be a situation next year where we say, hey, we've got some, like, doesn't mean they're the best guys ever, but we have some legitimate big leaguers. You're not seeing Kyle Farmer and Owen Miller, Alan Trejo. Like, I don't want to see those guys. I want to see legitimate big leaguers playing in their positions. And if someone in the minor league level does enough to earn their spot over that person, then great, fine by me. That's how it should work. But I got to see some actual big leaguers playing big league baseball.
Yeah, that's where I think they'll go in free agency, and that'll tell us a lot about not only the player that they sign, but the player that, because theoretically right now you could put if the season started today, you could say Hunter Goodman starting at catcher, Warming Bernabel probably starting at first base, second base is maybe Amador, and then you've got Tovar, you got Karros, you got Beck, Doyle, and then Mickey Moniak potentially, or Tyler Freeman. You can say that they have kind of a starting roster but you'll be able to tell by the moves that they make, like that they believe either that guy needs to be pushed and he needs to have a little bit of pressure on actually making the big league club and starting for this team come late March of 2026, or the players that they sign, like, oh, this guy clearly has a certain character about how he plays, that's the direction they're moving in with all of their players from the major league club all the way down.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. By the way, real quick, if you're watching on television, we are heading into overtime or extra innings. So head over to thednvr.com to continue this conversation, or head on to YouTube if you're not already there to watch the last minute or two of this conversation. McCade Brown, I know Mr. Purple's high on McCade Brown, and he has some metrics that I think give you a reason to be excited. His extension's obviously in the top percentile. I'm not there yet on him. He had some good outings, specifically in Seattle, but I need to see more. So I don't know if he's a guy that's going to be a real part of the rotation. I think he'll get a chance in spring training to earn that spot, but I don't know if he's going to be a real part of the rotation. We were talking about outfielders earlier. Mickey Moniak, we talked about Brenton Doyle, but if there's a guy that's kind of a no-brainer on the trade block for me this offseason, it's got to be Mickey Moniak. I mean, he had such a plus season last year for the Rockies. 20-plus home runs. He's a serviceable outfielder. Still relatively young, although he's one of the oldest Rockies. I think Mickey Moniak has to be in the conversation of, hey, what can we get? Make some calls on Mickey Moniak. He just doesn't fit the Rockies type, in my opinion, from what we're seeing from them right now. So he's another name that got thrown out there. But yeah, it's kind of a weird situation we're in, because we're just literally in a wait and see. I mean, it's just sitting here waiting for breaking news. It's kind of a frustrating spot.
It's frustrating, but it's fun because
it is fun,
there's a lot of tea leaves we can read into by each individual move.
Yeah.
And like we talked about multiple times, and the firing of the entire pitching strategist, a guy named Flint, by the way. Your name is Flint in 2025 is pretty insane. But that signals to us that what Paul said in his press conference wasn't just lip service. That is literally like saying this. 2 days later, you're firing and saying all these guys are not good enough to be leading the Rockies and their strategy on how to pitch, whether it's at the rookie ball level or the major league level.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, we are over our time right now, so I'm going to wrap this up. Just a heads up, we are going to be continuing our shows every Tuesday at noon, and we have a pretty big guest coming up. We don't have the official date scheduled with this guest, but it would be probably the biggest guest from a name perspective that we've ever had on this show. They've agreed to do the show with us. We're just getting the details and dates set up. That's going to be coming up probably before winter meetings, I would like to say. So that's going to be coming up here in the near future. Going to be in studio with us, so it's going to be a lot of fun. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. We appreciate your time. As always, we'll see you next week. This has been the DNVR Rockies. Have a good Tuesday.
We all silly like the mayor.